This is a Newbery Award-winning book. This book is called Dead End in Norvelt, written by Jack Gantos and won the medal in 2012. Jack Gantos also wrote the Jack Henry, Joey Pigza, and Rotten Ralph series. This book is about a town established during the Great Depression in the 1930s, a time when no one had any money. This town is named after Eleanor Roosevelt, the president's wife. It is in Pennsylvania. The government created towns for the middle class. Norvelt was built in 1937 and had 254 homes, a clothing factory, and a store. Many of these towns were built around the country for people who had no money. Our story starts at the beginning of summer vacation. Jack makes the poor decision to shoot his father's shotgun and gets grounded for the summer. His mother hires him out to Mrs. Volker, who has terrible arthritis. She writes the obituaries for the townspeople that die. Jack is in for more excitement than he realizes. And now I will read an excerpt from Dead End in Norvelt by Jack Gantos. I was eating from a jar of pickles in the kitchen and reading my favorite column in the newspaper. June 23rd, 1611. Henry Hudson was set adrift in Hudson Bay by mutineers and never seen again. June 23, 1683, William Penn signed a peace treaty with the Lenape Indian tribe covering land that would become part of our great state of Pennsylvania. I was wishing I could sign a treaty with my parents when the telephone rang. Mom picked it up and listened, then turned toward me and said, "Yes, Miss Volker, I'll send him right down." "I guess being a good neighbor is better than cash," I said brightly, trying to be charming. "You got me there," she replied, "but after you help her turn right around and march back home. No baseball or any monkey business, understand?" And her last word was punctuated by an arching eyebrow. "Yep," I said, and dashed out the door. "I promise." It took me less than a minute to run down to Miss Volker's yellow house, which was glowing under the morning sun as if it had been carved out of melting butter. It made me squint to look at it, but as I arrived I saw that she was waiting impatiently on her porch. She must have had her hair recently colored because it was so blue it looked like a massive hydrangea blossom. "Hurry," she called out and waved one of her red claws at me. "I just got a call from another possible dead person, a Norvelt original." "Who called?" I asked. "A spotter," she said in a hushed tone. That sounded mysterious. What's a spotter? "One of my network of spies who keeps an eye open on the last of the Norvelt folks. You know, someone who notices if they make it to church or miss, or if they go to the grocery store or pick up their mail, things like that. So I got a call today about Mrs. Dubicki over at house number C27. My spotter had not seen her for a week, and I know she hasn't been feeling well, poor thing." "So?" I asked. "So we must go over there immediately," she insisted, and leaned her blue bush of hair toward the garage. "I keep dialing her number, but no one answers. We must go find out if that phone will never be answered." "How do we get there?" I asked. "We'll take the car, and if we can't spot her from the road, we'll have to stop and look in her windows, and if we still can't see her, then we'll have no other choice." "You'll have to sneak in the house," she reasoned. "What if she's alive and recognizes me?" I said fearfully. "She'll call the cops and I'll be grounded forever, only in a jail cell. It would be best if you went in because nobody will arrest an old lady." "I can't go in," she replied. "I'm the medical examiner in this town. When I show up, people know I'm going to pronounce someone dead, sign their death certificate, and hand them over to Mr. Huffer, and then write their obit. No one alive wants a visit from me. These folks scatter like pigeons when I follow them up and down a grocery store aisle." "Well, what should we do?" I asked. She said, thinking out loud. "It would be best if you wore a disguise." "I have my Halloween costume from last year," I suggested. "Of what?" she asked. "The Grim Reaper," I said. She threw back her head, and her cackling laugh showed off her old lady teeth, which looked like a couple of rows of tiny marble tombstones. "You are my perfect partner," she said grandly. "Mrs. Dubicki's going to have to see the Grim Reaper sooner or later, so it might as well be sooner. Now go fetch it, and hurry. I'll wait for you by the car." I ran back across the yards and sneaked around the pony pen to the back of our garage and opened that half door Dad had showed me. My costume was hanging up in an overflow closet full of out-of-season coats and my grandparents' clothes that Mom couldn't bear to give away. I grabbed the costume, the mask, and the long-handled plastic sieve. I was just sorry I didn't have Mrs. Slater's false teeth with me because that would make it even more spooky. Then as quickly as I'd run up to the garage, I turned and ran down to Miss Volker's car. I just figured she would drive because she was the adult, but she was standing on the passenger side. "The keys are in the ignition," she said. "Now open the door for me." "I've only driven a tractor," I said nervously. "I don't know if I can drive a car." "It's the same," she said. "Just go slow and it won't matter if you hit anything." "But what if I slowly drive off a cliff?" I asked. "You'll have more time to pray before you hit the bottom," she said impatiently. "Now try to be a man and let's get going." I threw the costume in the back seat and I opened the passenger door and helped her in, then ran around the front of the red Plymouth Valiant. It was a small car, but I was still worried because I was even smaller. When I sat in my dad's truck and pretended to drive, I had a hard time reaching the pedals while still sitting high enough on the seat in order to be able to see out the windshield. I could do one or the other, but I could not do both. Luckily, Miss Volker's car was a lot tighter inside, and after I scooted the seat all the way forward and stretched my legs out, I could reach the gas pedal and just enough of the brake. "Turn the key," she ordered. "Hurry." I turned the key and it started right up. "Now, put it in drive," she snapped. "Come on, you're moving like a snail. That woman might be in trouble, or dead, and if she is, I should be the first to know. That vulture, Mr. Hover, is always beating me to the body, but it's my job to pronounce a dead person dead before he calls the family and tries to sell them a casket and all the pricey trimmings." I pushed a button on the dashboard, which had a big D for drive on it, and tentatively pressed down on the gas, and we inched forward. "More gas," she insisted. "Gun it." I gave it a lot more gas, and we flopped back into our seats. I got scared and hit the brakes, and we both jerked forward. "Do you want me to drive?" she barked, and held up her ready claws. "I'll get the hang of it," I said nervously. "It'll just take me a minute." I gave it more gas, and slowly we crept forward, and I turned out of the driveway and onto the Norvelt Road. "She just lives a few streets down," Miss Volker informed me, and pointed the way with her bent-up fingers. As I felt comfortable behind the wheel, I gave the Valiant more gas. For a second, I dared to take my eyes off the road and glance at the speedometer to make sure I wasn't breaking the law. We were going 15 whole miles per hour. "I can run faster than you drive," she said, and was so exasperated she suddenly lurched forward and stomped her foot over mine. The engine revved up and my heart beat faster, and I gripped the steering wheel as we flew down the road. "That's more like it," she said. "Miss Volker, you are scaring me," I said in a nervous voice. "Hush up and turn here," she ordered, and lifted her foot off of mine as she pointed to the left. I turned wildly, and our tires squealed as we nearly clipped a mailbox, and when I straightened up, we went along a curvy road lined with maple trees. Finally, Miss Volker reached up and hooked the steering wheel with her stiff thumb, and we careened off the road, hopped the dirt curb onto the overgrown weeds, which was really Miss Dubicki's front lawn. I put all my weight onto the brake pedal, and we slid sideways to a stop. By then, I was panting like a dog. "This is her house," she said. "She hasn't painted it since 1934. I like Miss Dubicki because that busybody Spiz gave her a ticket for having a shabby-looking house, and she chased him off the property with her dead husband's double-barrel shotgun." We both stared at the faded greenhouse with dirty white shutters. I'm not sure what I expected to see, maybe a flag at half-mast in respect for the dead. "All the curtains are closed," I whispered, "and they are black." "Those are her old blackout curtains from the war," Miss Volker explained. "It's not a good sign they're closed," she added. "Most people prefer to die in the dark. My guess is that she's history. But you have to go in there and confirm it. Just enter the house and come back with a detailed report of what you find." "Do I have to?" I asked. I really didn't want to sneak into a house and stumble around like the Grim Reaper who had come to harvest Mrs. Dubicki. What if she wasn't dead and still had that giant gun she was going to shoot Spiz with? Or what if she was dead and I didn't see her and I stepped on her? That would scare me so much my nose would probably explode like a blood grenade. Just think how unfair it would be, Miss Volker mused, if I wrote her obituary and she was still alive. Now that would be cruel if the shock of reading about her own death killed her. Besides, she's on death's door already. I happen to know she has a heart that's about to quit. Okay, I said reluctantly, I'll do it. But don't you dare tell my mom. Cross my heart, she promised, and raked her stiff fingers across her chest. I got out of the car and opened the rear door. In a moment, I had my costume on and was stumbling up her driveway. The hooded mask kept slipping down over my eyes, and I held the scythe straight out like a lance so I didn't run face first into something solid. After I made it up the front steps, I reached forward and touched the doorknob and gave it a turn. It wasn't locked, so I pushed it open. Mrs. Dubicki? I called out. Are you alive? I heard something scratchy that I couldn't make out. Mrs. Dubicki, I called again. Did you say something? Again I heard sounds, but they were muffled. Oh, jeez, I thought. I bet a burglar broke in and left her tied up with a gag around her mouth. With the blackout curtains closed and that mask half covering my eyes, it was dark inside the hallway as I shuffled forward with my scythe waving in front of me. I came to a wall and turned left. I was going in the right direction because the scratchy sound grew louder. Mrs. Dubicki, I shakily called. Hello? Are you alive? Once I got a little ways along the hall, I could see light peeking out from under an interior door. That was promising. I shuffled down there and tapped on the door with my scythe. Mrs. Dubicki, I asked in a scared little boy voice, are you bound and gagged? Or if you have a gun, please take the bullets out. And if you're dead, could you please come back to life because I'm really afraid of dead people. I slowly opened the door and peeked into the dimly lit room. Oh, it was sad. There she was, slumped all the way back in her recliner, about 2 feet in front of the TV. The Pittsburgh News was on, and an announcer was talking about where people could receive their second round of polio vaccine. Miss Volker had stressed that if I found Mrs. Dubicki dead, to pinch her arm and make certain she wasn't just napping because, as she said, when old people nap, they look like cadavers. Mrs. Dubicki, I whispered, are you taking an old lady nap? I wished she'd pop awake and let out a demonic laugh and just go ahead and scare me witless. I mean, what if she was alive? What would I say to her? What? I stepped forward, took a deep breath, and poked her on the shoulder with my plastic scythe. Mrs. Dubicki, I said politely, if you're still among the living, could you please inform me so I don't have to pinch you? She didn't move a muscle. I took a deeper breath, reached out, and pinched the spotted old skin on her lifeless forearm. Suddenly she sat straight up, and I jumped back and froze. She was silent at first as she batted her eyes and shook the sleep off. Was she like Lazarus and had just now come back from the dead? Or had she never died to begin with? I didn't know. And then she slowly turned toward me and crossly asked, guess you'll have to read it and find out.